What is up, guys? Delboy here. So Joe Joyce's next opponent has been announced for the undercard of Chris Eubank Jr. versus James DeGale on February the 23rd. He will be fighting former WBC heavyweight champion Bermane Stiverne. I just wanted to share my thoughts on this fight. For a guy who's 7-0, I don't think it's terrible, I've got to be honest. I think it's clever matchmaking because the promotion can sell it as Joe Joyce stepping up against a former heavyweight champion. No matter how weak you felt his reign was or how bogus it was, on paper he was a former world heavyweight champion. That always looks good, so it's a good marketing ploy. And especially if Joe Joyce destroys Bermane Stiverne, he can then say, oh, I destroyed a former heavyweight champion. It just looks good. So from a marketing point of view, this fight makes a lot of sense. Also, both guys have sparred each other. There's that angle you can go down. Apparently, Joe Joyce bashed him up in sparring. Bermane Stiverne says otherwise, so you can play on that angle as well. There is something to work with on this fight in terms of the promotional sense. But as a fight, how competitive will this match even be? I'm not so sure. I've got to be honest, I believe Bermane Stiverne is shot. I've got to be honest. He's 40 years old. He doesn't keep himself in the best of shape. He is coming off a first round knockout loss to Deontay Wilder, and he's had 3 fights in the last 4 years. So he's inactive, he's 40 years old, he's overweight, and he's coming off a terrible defeat. When you add it all together, it doesn't look too promising for Bermane Stiverne. And the fight I really felt killed Bermane Stiverne's career was the first Deontay Wilder fight. He took a hell of a lot of punishment in that fight, and I believe that fight took a lot out of Bermane Stiverne. I'm not saying Bermane Stiverne was great when he was at his best, but he was a good solid heavyweight with decent punching power, decent counter-punching ability. He was an okay fighter, but that first Deontay Wilder fight really took everything out of Bermane Stiverne in my opinion. So can Bermane Stiverne give Joe Joyce any real problems? I've got to be honest, I don't see it. I think he's shot to bits at this stage, and I'd expect Joe Joyce to do a good job on him. The interesting thing is, how does Joe Joyce go about it? What style does he incorporate to beat Bermane Stiverne? When Bermane Stiverne was at his best, I mentioned he was a counterpuncher. He always looked better when guys were coming at him. I mean, if you go back to the 2 Chris Arreola fights, Arreola was being aggressive, and, you know, Bermane Stiverne was catching him coming in. He was hurting him with big counter punches. That was Bermane Stiverne's game. Bermane Stiverne was never this aggressive front foot fighter that people made him out to be. I mean, look at the first Deontay Wilder fight. When Bermane Stiverne had to come forward and force the fight, he had no idea on how to cut off a ring. He had no idea on how to close the distance, and he got outboxed. And even the Ray Austin fight back in 2011, a shot Ray Austin was keeping him behind a jab for, what, 11 rounds? I mean, Bermane Stiverne is not a good aggressive fighter. He likes to wait for you to come onto him and make a mistake so he can counter. That is Bermane Stiverne. And it will be interesting to see if Joe Joyce adopts his usual crash bang wallop style of coming forward, throwing clubbing punches and closing the ring down. Will he do that? Or will he actually try and use his legs and try and use a consistent jab and keep Bermane Stiverne at bay? Because in the amateurs, Joe Joyce was always an aggressive fighter. He liked to come forward and overwhelm you. But in the pro ranks, he's demonstrated quite a few different facets of his game. In his pro debut, he fought a guy called Ian Lewison. Ian Lewison is a come-forward fighter, bit of a plodder, and Joe Joyce actually changed his style in that fight, and he kept it at range, he moved his feet, and he kept popping the jab and outboxing Ian Lewison until Ian Lewison couldn't go on. That was a really good performance from Joe Joyce, and I wonder if he will adopt a similar game plan in this fight. Bermane Stiverne, like I said, poor coming forward, slow feet, he's there to be outboxed. And if Joe Joyce adopts a similar game plan to the one in the Lewison fight, he will definitely outbox Stiverne and probably stop him at some point. If Joe Joyce reverts to type and he's aggressive and he comes forward looking for the early knockout, I'm sure he will get it, but by doing that, you do give Bermane Stiverne a bit more of a chance, because like I said, his bread and butter is counterpunching. So is Joe Joyce going to risk that? Even if this Stiverne is shot, you know, the last thing to go is power, and Stiverne does hit fairly hard. Joe Joyce has been knocked out in the amateurs. So, you know, does Joe Joyce really want to risk it and try to get the early knockout by being aggressive? We will see. If I was him, I would just be smart, pop that jab, move your feet, do all of the things that Bermane Stiverne hates, and if Joe Joyce does that, he wins this fight easily. But to be honest, at this stage, even if Joe Joyce is aggressive, he probably still knocks Bermane Stiverne out in good fashion. It's just by doing that you give Stiverne a little bit more of a chance. Share your thoughts below. How do you see this fight going? Do you think this is a good step up for Joe Joyce? As I said, on paper it looks good. A former heavyweight champion. And, you know, arguably even this version of Stiverne would be the best guy Joe Joyce has ever fought. Although saying that, would Bermane Stiverne in 2019 beat Lenroy Thomas or Kaladze? I'm not so sure, to be honest, but this version of Stiverne is around that level. So yeah, I'd expect Joe Joyce to do a good job. I expect Joe Joyce to win the fight by stoppage. Share your thoughts below. Peace.